Well, now, it looks suspiciously like we are live for a rail natter. Hello, everyone. It's episode 194. We are planning tonight to dig into Britain's passenger rail usage data. If you remember last, let's click over here. Hello, everyone. By the way, hello in the chat. Hello, I can see sound appearing before me. If you remember the feed that we had been using to generate our post-COVID versus during COVID ridership statistics versus pre-COVID levels has been paused at the moment, which is a little frustrating. Ostensibly on data quality reasons, but anyway. In the meantime, the ORR have released their passenger rail usage report for November 2023, which covers up to basically covers up to kind of summer and a bit beyond. It covers from April to June 2023, and there are some interesting things to look at in this. This is the first quarter of the 2023-2024 financial year. There are some interesting things in here. There's a lot of extra detail that we don't get from the other data set, including things like revenue, vehicle kilometers, which is a very interesting one. There's some good stuff that we can pick through, and that's what we're going to do tonight. It's a live session, so chuck your questions in the same direction. Is this the same set of data that Jeff uses in his least used stations series? Yes, it's the same, or the ORR data includes that information, but actually it's a different data set technically. There are lots of different data sets the ORR generate, and all are accessible within the ORR data portal. So thanks to the ORR and the folks in the ORR who maintain that. I look forward to you all being subsumed into British Rail soon, and this just being part of the British Rail stats, because if I just go big face. Oh, I forgot to put the big light on behind me. It's going to be a bit dingy in here for once, because in the past, it used to be that BR would publish this. There's a document here. The British Railways Board Facts and Figures there. They used to publish all sorts of interesting tidbits. And within this one, what's quite interesting is that the Eastern region have their own slip that's been added into this, which includes the rather nice thing saying, haven't we done well? British Rail Eastern region there, talking about their financial progress, which is quite fun. Maybe someday we'll do some flick throughs of this, because there's some really lovely and quite interesting data in here. Stuff to do with the different rolling stock, So this is very much the data here that we're looking at is the stuff that this is the equivalent data sets that they are ostensibly publishing. So it's always interesting to have a look at that. Anyway, this data this will be the branding I'm sure that BR will use when BR returns and publishes this ORR data when the ORR is subsumed into BR in the future. We can dream about together. Anyway, let's put that back on the shelf so I don't lose it. Anyway, for the additional description of kind of this data, definitely go back and look at the John Bull's London Reconnections long read. Well worth flicking through. There's some stuff that I'm thinking about in this, but actually it's been a while since I read the piece, so that I'll be interpreting the data on my own with my own thoughts this evening. But to go back and have a look at that report from John Bull in London Reconnections, because it's very insightful, lots of useful stuff. There's some people here playing the bingo. I can't remember what we had as a We Are Live or Is There Sound. I think I was fairly pro in trying to introduce the episode without my usual catchphrases. Anyway, right, let's get on with it, shall we? Everyone, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. As the Intercity 225 fades away, Raphael Nicolaus asks, the data in the book, was it metric? Yeah, I believe it was metric, yes, for the most part. Anyway, before we start, we must talk about the news, which is, obviously we had another stupid budget day, a ridiculous British tradition that I look forward to disappearing for good. let us talk about the one key. So the Resolution Foundation, as has become traditional, have done a thread pointing out how stupid the autumn statement was and how many more people it's going to impact. So obviously the first thing they always do in the thread, which I think is really good, is they point out which groups of people on which income deciles, or in here it's not deciles, here it's whatever the half of a decile is. 20ths is the number of adults who are going to be losing support due to changes in the work capability assessment. So poorer people versus richer people. Net equivalized household income vigintiles. Crikey. Maybe that's the bottom 20%. In any case, basically, it's impacting on the worst off in society very hard. Relevant to what we talk about, though, is the graph of the next thing here, which is the number 2 thing that they've pulled out of the autumn statement, which is that capital spending is set to fall by over a third as a share of GDP between its peak in 2023-24 and 28-29. A cut equivalent to 20 billion in current prices, seriously undermining future growth prospects. Also our chance of tackling climate change in any way whatsoever. Bearing in mind that, let's zoom in on that graph. Bearing in mind that the 2020s is supposed to be the decade that we do everything. This is the decade we're supposed to do everything. Our investment should be up at historic high levels because we're facing a historic challenge. Historic high levels being the mid to late 60s here, when we spent 8% of GDP investment. We should be up there on our levels of investment right now. Instead, we are looking at record lows, and all at a time when we should be doing stuff. It's frightening. It is absolutely frightening. This is bad. Well, on top of this, of course, is the budget day is a bad way to run a country anyway. We should not balance the finances of the year on press releasable nonsense stuff that happens once a year. This stuff should be getting checked and should be evolving and therefore should be open to scrutiny all year round, not all of a sudden once. And someone pointed out, with a reasonable suggestion, which is, well, there are advantages to having it on one day because it gives, that's the day that they release the data. So, well, no, the data should just be constantly getting updated. That data should be updated. There should be targets to either have a portal that updates the data automatically, which is preferential, or update it every week or every month, depending on what level of data management is required, data handling and cleaning is required. But this stuff should be updated constantly so that we have scrutiny, transparency. Those are important parts of a real functioning democracy, unlike the UK, which is not a functioning democracy. Anyway, so all good fun stuff. What else is going on? Oh yeah, that's right. Hugh Merriman here, doing another nice little photo with some people in a room. This time it's competition. This is the quote from Hugh here. Competition delivers choice for rail passengers and has driven up quality and demand on the East Coast. Great to join our rail partners. Is Rail Partners the new name for RDG or a bit of or the ATOC? Basically, it's the representative of the train operators, suspect group, and Network Rail. Fine, operators and officials across government to discuss how we can encourage new entrants via open access reform. I'm deeply sceptical of the value of open access in any location under any circumstance. I'm sceptical of the suggestions that it improves quality on routes, but where those arguments have been made, mostly Italy, to some extent France, but I think Italy has the strongest case for open access having been a success. There is substantial additional capacity in the Italian rail network to satisfy it. Signals to dangers here. Hello. In the UK, we do not have additional capacity. In fact, we are chronically short of capacity, and there's an irony that the line with some of the most squeezed capacity on the network is the East Coast Main Line, which is where the majority of almost all of the open access operations are in the country. And those open access operations are extractive. They rely on assets, including depot facilities and so on, that are used to support the incumbent state-owned, in much of the case, operator, and they also rely on that infrastructure in terms of the rail, the tracks, or the actual linear infrastructure asset that is state-supported, and it's not that, yes, they pay track access charges, but it's more than just the track access charges. They simply wouldn't exist without that asset, and they are also sitting in reasonably lucrative time slots that could be used up by LNER services. They are extractive. They complicate the timetable. They make it a more complicated railway. I just think we should get rid of all of them. Yes, I just not here for open access operation on the mainline UK on the mainline GB network. Yeah, they do have open access to state assets, is my Karen here. Anyway, right, the fun bit, or rather the frightening bit, because crack brackets crack. Yes, the Western region, or whatever it's called these days, Wales and Western. Basically, the Great Western Main Line has had 4 cracks in the space of about a week. This is not good. There are a variety of things here that are not good. So let's work in reverse order on the picture here. I'm going to audio describe this for the audio-only people. On the screen are 3 irritatingly portrait phone pictures of some cracks, which would obviously be much more useful if they'd been... Everyone, don't be afraid to turn your phone around. If those people had turned their phone around, they would have taken a picture that allows me to see more of the site conditions to understand what's going on here, rather than just a picture of the crack. It's incredible how we don't provide training to our staff to take pictures. This is like a fun train. Just do a course. It doesn't even need to be a course. Just like have a morning on a little briefing session, and the briefing session is how to take pictures that are actually useful with your phone. In any case, there's some serious issues going on here. Let's work in reverse order. First picture here, because of the proximity, it's a very nice high resolution and crisp photograph, well lit photo taken at night, but it's very close up on okay, you can see there's a crossing nose, you can see the I'm amazed how well I drew that outline with my mouse there. Anyway, there's the crossing, the nose of a crossing, so we know that this is a cast crossing, and here you can see there is a scallop, a fillet, a cut shape into the foot of the crossing nose here. We've talked about this before in a previous episode. There's stress concentration at this scallop, at this fillet. Likewise, the next picture here, where again crossing nose, it has failed at the this one. So this one's failed right at the nose, which is really bad because it's a very heavy impact here. This one has failed further back, so the nose is in this direction, and kind of here. So we're kind of going back. We're probably maybe 2 bearers, 1 or 2 bearers back from the crossing nose here, in kind of in the direction of travel. This first picture, the third picture on screen, difficult. There is some dust on the ballast, indicating a potential wet bed, but it's hard to tell. Also, behind here there's some discoloration of the ballast. And what looks like quite a clean interface of the ballast. I'll get rid of my scribble so you can see that again. That clean interface there is often an indicator that there has been vertical motion, kind of cyclical vertical motion of in this case a bearer, which is an indicator of trackbed failure. But certainly avoiding. There's no obvious slurrying like there are in the other pictures here. There's no obvious slurrying that would be the cause. But basically, this is not just because there is some innate failure with the crossing nose. It's because there's a failure of the support under the crossing. I mean, of course, also yes, it's this bearer. Ideally, the layout of this bearer. As we've talked about before, the layout should put the bearer under the crossing nose, not next to it, because actually what this creates, given the impact let's get rid of my scribbles, given all the impacts happen right here on this point, massive vertical impacts when the train goes over, what would make sense is to support that rather than put it precisely on a pivot point on the edge of a bearer. So whether or not there's wet beds here, this is a good indicator of a problem with the design of this standard S&C layout. So that's one thing going on here. So that's picture 3. Picture 2, we don't dwell on this because it's P-way chat, and you know what? Let's talk about cracks. Picture 2 here is more problematic. So again, this is an S&C layout. This is a bearer, but there are much more obvious signs here of track bed failure, of wet beds here. Wet bed is a kind of a weird way to describe where you have kind of a failure of the drainage or a failure of the track bed. You have moisture underneath the, or kind of within the ballast, underneath the sleeper. Moisture is incompressible, which means that when the train goes over that moisture, that pooling, often manifesting itself as kind of what looks like a slurry, because you get a breaking up of the ballast, which mixes into like a cementitious mud with the water. And so this dust of the ballast, or potentially concrete dust as well from the sleeper, combines with the water to form this sort of concretey or cementitious looking slurry, hence the wet bed. Always looks very gross and messy. Water is incompressible, which means that you get a severe hammer effect when the train goes over a wet bed. It's very, very bad for the track, very, very high impact forces, and as a result of that, track materials get smashed to bits. Indeed, you can see the tendons here exposed from the fact this bearer has completely disintegrated. It's not just that we've got a nice crack, we've got a crack has formed, but the bearer underneath is completely disintegrated. The disintegrated bearer also suggests that, and as does the hammer effect here, that trains have run over this crack, which is not good. We don't want trains to run over cracks to the extent where you're getting hammer, which suggests multiple trains have run over the crack. This has been in service for some time. How long, we'll find out from the investigations, I'm sure, but this is not good. This is very much not good. This, however, is not as bad as picture 1 that we have here. I'll get rid of my scribbles again, because S&C crossings, you have high hammer effects. You have bearers that are larger and that can cope with more force. They also generally are more heavily inspected. S&Cs are known points of failure. S&Cs, so switches and crossings, the areas where tracks diverge and converge, known points of failure, therefore do receive more visual inspections through the operation of the railway, the time period of the operation of the railway. Plain line, as in the kind of just regular ass track that is connecting S&C units, so miles and miles and miles of uninterrupted track that people pay a lot less attention to, rightly so, because it's repeated, simple, straightforward. The idea that you have a wet bed that is severe enough, so here you can see the wet bed, you can see that slurry I'm talking about, horrible messy stuff. You can see it all splashing, and it's actually this cementitious moisture, wetness is actually splashing. It's a classic telltale, is actually it's splashing that stuff up onto the rail here, and kind of painting it white almost. This wet bed is severe enough that the sleeper, the rail has cracked, the sleeper has completely disintegrated, and a train is on top of it. The circumstances by which a train is stopped on top of this crack suggest to me a driver has gone over this with an exceptionally loud bang and applied the emergency brake, which wouldn't have been very nice to the passengers inside. This is very bad for this to be happening. We should not be seeing these failures in the operation, within the operational railway. So this is not good. We should not be seeing. Okay, within S&C, at crossing noses, these are should be avoided. We should not be seeing failures like this within S&C, but it can happen. The East Coast Main Line had a surge of these over a much longer time period, it must be said, but the LNER sees these, every now and then LNER or the Network Rail on the East Coast Main Line will post about some of these because there's been a failure like this, partly because the S&C on the East Coast Main Line is knackered in lots of parts or kind of part repaired on existing bearers, whatever it happens to be. For this to be happening on, so these are, what are these? These are kind of probably F-27s, pretty standard concrete sleepers. Clearly a drainage, wet beds often drainage, certainly, generally it's failed track bed, usually from poor drainage. For us to be seeing this level of failure is really bad. We should not be seeing this. There's been a failure in the processes of notification of problems. I wonder what could have allowed this to happen. It's a good job Network Rail haven't been forced to reduce maintenance and inspection frequencies, reduce maintenance staff. Anyway, more on that in a second, because yes, so we're talking about why crossing noses crack. If you want more detail on that, then go back to episode 167 where we talk about that. Fine. Okay, but let's briefly pause for a second and talk about what's happened as a result of this. Well, firstly, the ORR have launched an investigation. Actually, they launched an investigation into those three. Since then, there's been a fourth crack at Hayes. I couldn't find a picture of that. I don't know if a picture is in circulation. I think Network Rail will be in more lockdown mode to make sure no pictures get out, because pictures always look dramatic and annoyingly they don't get circulated. Hopefully, I don't know whether those pictures were originally on social media via Network Rail or not, but the Hayes one I couldn't find. Someone might be able to post a link in the chat in any case. So the ORR have launched an investigation into they've said poor train punctuality and performance. What they mean is the cracks. And there are I'm sure there are other things as well, but the cracks going on fine. And then Network Rail have responded to that. Michelle Hanforth here, giving a kind of a statement from Network Rail Western. The ORR has announced an investigation into Network Rail's Wales and Western region. We welcome this review, or welcome the review. I'll encourage you to go further, and we will work with the ORR on it. Our statement is below. We welcome this cross-industry review, which recognises the importance of Network Rail and the train operating companies working effectively together to deliver a reliable railway for the thousands. Okay, waffle, doesn't say anything. Stupid statement. Next one. We know that when we work efficiently and effectively with train and freight operating companies, leads to more reliable services. Okay, right. So waffle, more waffle. However, we recognise there is much more work to be done across our region, and our biggest challenge is within the critical Thames Valley, which is one of the busiest railway corridors in the country. We will, of course, cooperate fully with the ORR as it undertakes its review and look forward to receiving its recommendations. Okay, so not really said anything useful here. As I was saying, if we hop back to episode 189, which was really not that many episodes ago, which was a news episode, you'll remember this particular story relating to Network Rail cutting nearly 500 posts in track renewal. That includes the high output ballast renewal teams, ballast health being a very important part of avoiding wet beds. If you refresh ballast life, reduce ballast life is bad for creating cracks. Drink from the wet bed, yes indeed, Richard Fraser, yeah, so as I say, it's a good job Network Rail haven't been forced to reduce their track renewals teams, reduce their headcount of skilled staff, haven't had their funding reduced, allowing them to renew drainage, haven't had been forced to or decided that it was expedient to reduce inspection frequencies, of things like the geometry train, things like the ultrasonic testing train. Good job, yeah. Oh no, all of those things have happened, and this is... And then the reason I talk about this is because the ORR have opened up the investigation, but the ORR are the ones who are the conduit through which government reduces funding for the railways in real terms. The ORR are the ones who sign the cheque, as it were. So it's a bit of a... It's all very well, convening a little investigation, but what the ORR should do is tell government that it needs to increase funding. But the ORR can't do that because that's not they're not remit to do that, and they know that they would be abolished if they attempted it. So it's not like anything's going to happen from this investigation. If they tell Network Rail off and say, Network Rail, you need to spend more money in this area, then it only means that less money is being spent elsewhere. The railway is a big wall. It's a big flat wall colander with water pouring through in lots of holes, and the fewer people with fewer hands you have to plug those holes, the more water leaks in. In this case, literally and metaphorically. Have we had an episode on sleepers? Could be on ballast. We have had. Sorry, this is Zydit on YouTube here. We've had an episode on sleepers. Could we have one on ballast? We could have an episode on ballast, couldn't we? Yeah, we could. I fully intend to get my dear friend Ben Brooks on to talk about high output at some point. That'd be good. Shout, can you start listening to this? You might well be listening now. Hello, Ben. Lovely to have you on board if you are listening. Anyway, I digress. In fact, you know what? Let's pause the news. I'm sure there might be more to pick up on this later or next time, but we'll keep a close eye on that. But it really is the chickens. Well, it's not necessarily the chickens coming home to roost. There could be some deep-seated issues that have lasted longer, but it's not. It's certainly not health. This is a good example of the sort of thing we're going to see happening more. Let's put it that way. And climate change, of course, as we have more extreme rainfall, generally climate change is going to put more stress on our drainage assets and on our track assets, not less. So we're going to see more of this, even if we weren't also reducing maintenance regimes. So tricky. Anyway, right. let's get my little face in the corner as we push on to talk about the rail passenger stats, because that's what we're all here for, right? Yes. So what else have we got? Yeah, just checking the chat. Do chuck at me at my name if you've got questions. This is going to be quite a nice discursive episode. You know, what is it? 2024. Well, crikey, we're already. I talked about P-Way for a bit too long, didn't I? Well, that was inevitable. Let's get this thing up and let's talk about the RR data. So I need to switch. The first thing I need to do is do the usual, which is switch on my cursor so you can see what I'm talking about. Here is it's a PDF document. You can go and download it yourselves. I recommend you do so. Background: in the latest quarterly statistical release contains information on what the latest. Oh, this come on, clear English campaign. Actually, has this got clear English campaign? A little warning for me flicking through PDF pages quickly. I should have given you that one a bit earlier, shouldn't I? ONR, check your wording of this paragraph. It's the first paragraph on here. Anyway, it's fine. This is the latest. Fine, whatever. This is basically it's covering the latest quarter of available data, which is the start of the financial year. So that's April, the 1st of April to the 30th of June, 2023. We have got a total of 390 million journeys. What's nice is that we can look at this plotted on a little graph where you can see the gentle but steady. Well, it's not really very gentle at all. It's a huge amount of growth through 2018 into 2019. The kind of growth, and then all of a sudden. And we had COVID, and we went from where were we? 400 and. In fact, does it have the number on there? My eyes have gone absolutely blind to it. Well, it's basically well in excess 460-ish million journeys down to 390. Actually, it might well be in the 461 peak of 461 million journeys a quarter. By the way, in the peak in 2019, and then we're now back at 390. So, substantially kind of climbing on that. It's quite a substantial leap versus previous quarters as well, where it looked like it kind of looked like growth had, the snap back, as it were, had slowed a little. Well, then it's climbed quite quickly again in the last quarter. Gives us a chance to see how many billion passenger kilometres were travelled in that quarter as well. A 10% increase on the previous quarter, on the same quarter in the previous year. Sorry. So generally we're comparing with the equivalent quarter in the previous year because it makes sense to do so. You can see that the numbers were quite a lot lower in that quarter. There you can see kind of just above 300 in that quarter. Was it 328 million journeys versus 390? So, okay, so the passenger journeys is not that useful a measure. Is the problem. It is not that useful a measure. So let's go down. So this interesting one here is total passenger revenue. It was 2.6 billion in the latest quarter, which is a 10% increase on the 2.3 billion in the same quarter in the previous year. Fine, good. And it's the point that all the data tables, you can get all the raw data that's in this stuff on the data portal. Passenger rail usage page of the data portal. Links are all in the PDF. It's very nice. It's all very straightforward. So some nice context here. So the first context is recovery from the pandemic. Fine. Comparisons from April 2023 onwards will focus on year-on-year changes instead. So basically they're saying that we're stopping looking at pre-COVID levels. We're going to just kind of look at things as new. Which, you know what, fine, as long as we don't lose that context and people kind of don't forget that context. It's pointing out the fact that we're actually still, it's a shame they don't trace this graph back to the last time we were at 390, but. The last time we were at 390 was like in 2016-17 or possibly 2017-18. It's not that long ago. We're talking a few years ago that we were at the level of rail usage we have now. So the idea of talking the doom and gloom that we hear is just bizarre. Of course, that's accepting the fact we also need to see enormous growth. Right. And people are moaning about a word. What word have I said? Everyone's very upset about a word I've said. Gareth, what word have I said that you don't like? Anyway, right. The next one is the Elizabeth Line infrastructure. Of course, Crossrail is opened. So Crossrail, as they're saying, since services on the central section started running, there's been a significant uplift on journeys overall counted in Lennon, which is the kind of a crew ticketing system. You can read more about that on John Bull's piece on London Reconnections. Basically it's saying, good God, there's so many bloody journeys from that. That's essentially what it's saying. So it's saying the latest quarter, so several months ago, there were 339 million journeys, which is 80% of the 424 million journeys pre-pandemic. So so it's kind of saying, right, you've got to think about the fact that there's that slight shift. Correction to Elizabeth Line overestimate of journeys in kilometres. So there's some data problems with Elizabeth Line data. We talked a bit about that last episode, so I'm going to run over it. This is also pointing out that there were multiple days of industrial action and reduced timetables, which means that fewer trains were planned. The estimated reduction on strike days ranged from 50 to 60, nearly 50 to over 60% fewer trains planned. So this has had a kind of a major impact on through this quarter. So there we are. And also, this is the fact that there's a little bit of a discussion about split ticketing. But again, John Bull goes into that, so I'm not going to dwell on that here. Let's get into the numbers. It's past. Let's get into the numbers here. Let's see. Oh, I see. There's discussion. There's all sorts of fun discussion going on in the chat. Do at me when when you have a question. Passenger, as I keep saying, passenger journeys by sector and operator. So, key figure: all franchised operators had a great number of passenger journeys in the previous year. Well, we'd expect that, wouldn't we? And what's interesting is the journeys, the difference in journeys before and after. These are nicely audios. Have nice alt text. These images. If you want to open the PDF and you have a screen reader, or you have any kind of other site issues, then these are kind of reasonably well described. Although obviously not quite in the detail that they are shown visibly. So, as we work our way down, we see that the most dramatic change is actually ScotRail. Seen a 33% increase in its quarterly passenger figures over that quarterly passenger journey figures over that period of time. Apparently, that's because ScotRail was in an absolute shambles of a mess in the preceding year, with all sorts of restricted working, with Sunday working, all sorts of problems that we haven't really talked much about. ScotRail not in as great a way as people might think it is. South of the border, things are, of course, getting better. So we talk about open access operators. We jump down to the opposite end of the table, and we can see the open access operators. They operate such small numbers. They have such small numbers of journeys that the changes in numbers may look significant, but they're not hugely necessarily that relevant. So that's it's useful that they've put the open access stuff down at the bottom, because they represent a tiny fraction of journeys. You can see here that only GTR carried more journeys in the quarter than Crossrail did. GTR, Go via Thameslink Railway, 68.3 million passenger journeys in the quarter compared to 51.1 million by the Elizabeth Line. That's a spectacular, absolutely the idea that Crossrail is going to overtake GTR very likely as things ramp up. There's a decent chance that Crossrail will overtake GTR and be the largest kind of train operation, kind of mainline big train operation in GB is quite spectacular, really, and good for TfL's finances, thankfully. Paul Prentice is here. Hi, Paul. Lovely to have you along. For South Eastern, there's certainly officially acknowledged impact from the opening of the Elizabeth Line on the metro route via Greenwich. Yes, this is another point I was going to go on to. So, there are other issues with South Eastern, of course, but let's jump down to South Eastern. You see there's a much lower percentage change, much lower numbers. LNER, well, so it's different. So South Eastern, much lower numbers. LNER is interesting because LNER is running already a highly successful, very full service at this point. So their growth, they'd already kind of been maxing out their 130% or plus of pre-COVID levels. So there's only so much growth they could see, actually, whereas ScotRail has a dramatic change because of the mess of working. Less than half of that growth was London Overground, and then it just quite linearly looked down, Greater Anglia, lots of London, generally you've got Overground, Anglia, GTR, so wider London area growth. Caledonian Sleeper is actually very small, so we're going to ignore that. Merseyrail, a bit of growth. Southwestern Railway, Avanti West Coast, 10% growth. Less dramatic growth that we've seen. Cross Country, pretty low growth, GWR lower growth. Again, with some of these longer distance operators, I wondered to what extent, because they're actually pretty full. Avanti not as full, because Avanti used for a lot of the sort of commuters that we have seen fewer of after post-COVID. So, but the other long distance operators looking like less growth, probably because they're closer to their maximum levels that they were before, actually. But of course, those long distance services account for lots of passenger kilometers, but not so much in the way of passenger journeys, which are accounted for by the high intense, the high density services of ScotRail is the outlier here, but the high density services of London Overground kind of Anglia within its kind of core route, GTR and Merseyrail, again a fairly high density service, albeit a much smaller one than GTR and some of the other London operators. Anyway, there's that data. So fine, okay, there's a little bit of a discussion. They go through sort of Crossrail and talk quite a bit about Crossrail and about the open access operators. I'm not too worried about those because the numbers are so much smaller. This is the. Yeah, there we go. So let's have a look at that. Franchise passenger journeys by ticket type. So this is some interesting numbers. So there are 49 million franchise passenger journeys made using season tickets in the latest quarter, which is a 5% increase from a year ago. Advance, anytime, peak, off-peak, all had increases in journey numbers compared to the previous year. However, season tickets have continued to decline in their overall share of journeys, with 13% of franchise journeys being made with season tickets in the latest quarter. So we can sort of see 2020, 21, 22, 23, the comparison between regular tickets and season tickets, and the season tickets have just dropped off a cliff, which is kind of a thing that was an inevitability anyway. It's lots of very interesting discussion going on in the chat already. So so let's see. So Michael C saying it's interesting to see that Lumo and Heathrow Express actually had a reduction. That does get mentioned by the ORR. Only Lumo and Heathrow Express had a lower number of passenger journeys compared to the previous year. However, the totals for both operators are still relatively similar to the previous year, with a reduction of 1% and 6% respectively. Okay, they don't really say much about why that is. It'd be interesting to unpick that. EMR very full. Replacement trains they've got coming barely increasing number of seats. It's baffling that they have not increased to the maximum length of set that they could use. It's just it's absolutely baffling UK railway move once more. Paul Prentice is pointing out interesting that I agree. Paul, I think you're agreeing with me, aren't you? You reckon LNER can't do much more without additional capacity, possibly an impact from Lumo and their initial strong growth and kind of slowing down a bit. It might be accounted for Lumo's slowdown, perhaps. Yes, as ever, very, very interesting. Liz Line taking business away from Heathrow Express. Yeah, that's probably a no-brainer. Yeah, that's a good point. Heathrow Express, which is just nightmarishly overpriced, and I look forward to it just not existing. There's no point in its existence. It's very expensive, pointed at tourists who don't know better. So here we are. All ticket types saw an increase in journeys. It's interesting that we see Advance 19% increase, but there were more of those tickets being sold the year before. So what's interesting is, as a relative percentage, what's interesting is that the anytime, peak, and off-peak services kind of tickets have gone up, relatively speaking. So that's kind of interesting. So then we get into more useful data. I think I've never been a huge fan of journeys because it masks a lot of information. What I'm interested in is those changes in passenger kilometres, which is the amount people are relying on the railways at large. And so we've seen a 10% increase since last year in passenger kilometres in this quarter. Passenger kilometres are still less than pre-pandemic levels at 86% of the figure from 4 years ago. So yes, there we go. So in all cases, the increase in passenger kilometres was less than the increase recorded in journeys. Therefore, all sectors experienced a reduction in the average journey length in the latest quarter when compared with the previous year. The largest disparity was in London South East, where there was a 24% increase in journeys, but only a 16% increase in kilometres travelled. Partly driven by the opening of the central section of the Elizabeth line, which resulted in a 6% decrease in average journey length. So this is interesting. This is interesting on a number of levels, partly because Crossrail there in that example has provided better connectivity, so people don't have to travel as far to reach their destination. But also, yeah, I wonder if the reason we've seen this change is because more people are returning to the type of journey that they used to do, that was shorter, like more regular work travel, rather than having longer journey. The sorts of longer journeys were the first to return because they were more necessary. The shorter journeys, the commuting journeys, are ones that have been slower to return as a mass, and so that's why we've seen this change in passenger journeys, in passenger kilometres per journey change over that year. That's my gut feeling, I believe. Others might have other insights. So there we go. You see that in terms of journeys have increased by, so London and South East journeys have increased by 24% compared to the previous year, but kilometres only 16%. Long distance journeys have increased by 8%, but kilometres only by 4%. So double the growth in journeys compared to kilometres. And then regional, it's actually pretty similar. So that I'd say arguably it's basically the same. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, this is there's a discussion that some of that includes the split ticketing. Conversely, Northern Trains showed a large increase. Basically, we're about to go through the comparison of passenger kilometres per journey, which is kind of by train operator. So basically, this table, but broken down rather than being broken down by kind of sector, LSE, long distance, regional. They're going to be broken down by TOC, train operating company, which is gives a slightly different picture. So yeah, Northern Trains showed the largest increase in average journey length due to a relatively unchanged number of journeys and a 7% increase in passenger kilometres. So more people are, people are willing to travel further on Northern, which is interesting. I don't know. I don't really have an insight into why that might be. Others may, which is interesting. So Northern Trains at the top of this list with an increase in passenger kilometres per journey. Southeastern, slight increase. C2C, slight increase. Again, I think with Southeastern, C2C and Merseyrail, that will be as a result of more commuters returning, so doing shorter trips relying on the railway. That's my gut feeling. Likewise, West Midlands Trains. TPE is broadly similar. This is not necessarily that much change. I think if you're down to 1% change, there's not huge significance to it. Anglia, Caledonia Sleeper, Southwestern Railway, GTR, not much change really. Overground, Chiltern, not much change. What's interesting is people are travelling shorter journeys on... wait a minute. Oh yeah, no, wait. Ignore what I just said because these are percentage increases. So that's actually people travelling further on Southeastern, C2C and Merseyrail and West Midlands. So that's not that there's more short journey commuters. The opposite is the case. It's likely that maybe people are just travelling from further afield. I mean, again, 2%, 1% is not a huge number. What kind of is interesting is LNER seeing a kind of they've had a 1% reduction in passenger kilometres, but they've had a 4% increase in the number of journeys. So actually people are travelling shorter journeys with LNER, which is interesting. Similar story with ScotRail, with East Midlands Railway, with Avanti, Great Western Railway. It's interesting. It's all the long distance operators generally there. Cross country, Great Western. So people are using the long distance services but travelling shorter journeys with them. Okay. So passengers kilometres by ticket type. So the kind of the same discussion we've just had. Advanced tickets, people are travelling shorter distances with their advanced tickets. They're not much change on any time or peak, but they're also travelling quite a bit shorter distances with off-peak as well per journey. So that's interesting. But with their season tickets, the opposite. There's a slight increase in the distance travelled by season ticket holders, so per journey. So that's quite interesting. This is also suggesting that the growth in passenger kilometres travelled per journey may be further reduced as the Scottish Government plans to roll out their peak fares removal pilot. We're going to be following that with very closely interested in that. So here's revenue. This is the thing that's often quoted as being why our rail industry has to contract. So let's see what the picture was from the first quarter of this year. The first quarter of this financial year. So passenger revenue by sector. This is currently per journey is what the next data set's going to be, and we get to see kind of what that. Well, let's have a look at the numbers. So barely any difference between revenue and kilometres. So this is the percentage change in passenger revenue per kilometre. This is saying how valuable every kilometre of journey is by sector, and we've seen a fractional decrease, but basically a very small decrease for a very large number of passengers, so meaningful, but a very small decrease in the value of every kilometre that passengers travel. So that's kind of, they're being ripped. This is how much people are being ripped off per kilometre, I suppose. People have got 0.4% more savvy for every kilometre they travel. So that's a reduction in how many kind of, first class travellers, I suppose, or those high value tickets. Long distance, then the revenue change per the percentage change in passenger revenue per kilometre, we're actually making more money out of our long distance travellers now than we were a year ago, by about 2%. Regional, though, reduction in 5%, so better use of advanced tickets. Travellers are avoiding peak, they're going for off-peak, so they're travelling cheaper per kilometre that they're moving around. Which is, Michael C is also pointing about split ticketing. Yes, more split ticketing thanks to Trainline rolling out split ticketing. DFT were very unhappy that they did that, but rightly they should have done it, because people shouldn't be paying a huge amount of money. They should be paying as little money as they have to for their journey, ideally less. Anyway, so there we are. Saying that open access operators don't account for much, not much to worry about, don't worry about them, fine. Passenger revenue by ticket type. So advanced tickets, again, this is the same statistics. So this is a percentage change in passenger revenue per kilometre. So we have, for advanced tickets, those are the cheap ones that you can book it ahead of time or in advance. Ooh, I really need to get like a filter. I can go in advance. Anyway, no, I'm not Alice. I don't have the clever kit everywhere. At some point, I'll get a drop pad and some sort of thing that does voice filters anyway, but that day is not today. 2%, let me just go back here. Yeah, we're making 2% more, as in we're making 2% more out of people. So advanced tickets are offering 2% less value per kilometre than they were a year ago, which is interesting. Whereas anytime or peak, people are getting 2% more value per kilometre. Paul, jump in and shout at me if you think I'm misinterpreting this, by the way. Off-peak, about 1% less, or kind of 1% more value. So the railway is making 1% less off its off-peak travellers now to a year ago, or not, at the start of the quarter, April to June, versus the year before. Okay, I don't. Those numbers are reasonably small. I'm not sure there's much to learn from them. I think there's more to learn from these actually. That 5% is quite something, and it seems interesting. So there are two statistics here. Two data sets. Data set, the kind of heading 4, heading 5 here. Passenger train kilometres and passenger vehicle kilometres. Now, these are interesting because the passenger train kilometres tells us what timetable is running. The passenger vehicle kilometres tells us what trains are being run to that timetable. So it accounts for vehicle length, train length. There's some archaic language that the ORR need to update here. Passenger train kilometres include only the distance covered by a train itself, and does not account for the number of carriages. Not locomotive. ORR. Don't use the word locomotive. There aren't many on our network anymore. You mean covered by a train. Overall, just covered by the train. Whereas the passenger vehicle kilometres is covered by, not by the locomotives and the carriages. It's covered by the number of cars, coaches, carriages in a train. Use carriages, most people understand it, fine. These two data sets are interesting. You can see that there is, I'm just flicking back and forth, there's not an enormous change between the two data sets. I think the data set that I'm going to dwell on is the passenger vehicle kilometres, because this is the one that lets us know basically which train operators are running fewer seats versus previously. But very briefly, the passenger train kilometres, it lets us know who's running more trains than previously. So ScotRail, because the reason they're at the top is because they're running on a reduced timetable. Reduced Sunday working, no Sunday working, and reduced other stuff. So that's why ScotRail are running that many more trains at the start of this financial year versus the previous. TPE, because their service has just been so shoddy that they managed to pull themselves up a bit. Merseyrail, similarly, are having challenges with their train fleet and other things. I think or the lack of new train fleet and some kind of similar issues with their so their timetable is jumped up to 11%. But then I think possibly also they've just increased frequencies. When were they running the new trains? They have been running some of the new trains, so possibly were they running the new trains at that point? Or were they? No, they weren't, were they? So actually, it's possibly they were ramping up the timetable in advance of the trains. Anyway, I'm not sure. Northern 7% increase, possibly new trains running, but kind of generally not a huge amount of change, other than we jump down to LNER, who are running. And this is also, of course, it includes disruption. This is the actual numbers, not just the timetable numbers. You see LNER's disruption quite substantial. They've actually run fewer. They were running a big timetable before. They were running fewer services. Likewise, Chiltern, GTR actually running fewer. GWR running fewer. Southeastern. But let's talk about passenger vehicle kilometres, because you'll notice that cross country are running, in terms of train kilometres run, they're running 2% fewer. But if we look at vehicle kilometres, you'll see that cross-country jumped down quite substantially at this point. And this is interesting because cross-country are running a substantially reduced timetable. Southeastern are also running a reduced timetable. Paul is in here and can take your flack on that one. Steve White will justify that on the basis of there being some Southeastern as a broadly commuting railway seeing a substantial, although not exclusively. There are lots of regional travels and tourist travellers using Southeastern, but obviously Southeastern rely on a lot of commuting, traditional London commuting, so they have seen quite substantial changes to the patterns of travel. And have theoretically adjusted their timetable accordingly. There's another episode in whether that was the right move to make. And in any case, what's interesting here is it's just this alteration. They're the largest decrease in vehicle kilometres they're running. This is Southeastern and cross country. Chiltern 6%. LNER 6%. So that makes more sense because that's basically LNER can't do much with the length of their trains, because thankfully most of their trains are not as many as I'd like. Most of them are fixed formations, so there's only so much they can do. So you can see this. There's not much change there. In LNER is 6%, as is Chiltern 6%, both in terms of vehicle kilometres and train kilometres. Which I just found that interesting. So you can see this. There's been an improvement at the top end. ScotRail, a very dramatic improvement, and then. There's quite dramatic problems down at the bottom end with I would say with Southeastern cross country. Interesting stuff, I would say. 5 divided by 4. Yes, that's true. Yeah, on average, you can see what train length is. On average, per train operator, you can divide number 5 by number 4, and it gives you how many. So I'll tell you what, that's a fun calculation. Let's do it for LNER. LNER, we're going to divide 5 by 4. So let's do this as let's bring in a little. Let's go here. Let's get a little Excel table in here, shall we? Let's do that. Let's have a look at some numbers, shall we? Because that's a fun little thing to do, I reckon. Let's hop in here, and we're going to start with LNER. Actually, I'm going to do this properly. Talk. 5, 4, and then av train length. There we go. This is the good stuff, folks. You're getting the really good stuff here. Let's go. Let's do this thing. We're going to start with LNER. And 5 is 50.5, and 4 is 5.7. 5.7, and that means this is 5 divided by 4, and it's the average train length is, funnily enough, I'll tell you what, let's get Super Excel ceiling. Let's go with, do you want ceiling or do you want average train length? No, let's go with, let's just round it. Let's just have a nice round. Let's round it up. So let's just round my numbers here. Boop 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 boop. Round to the nearest whole car length. And funnily enough, their average train length is 9 cars. Let's make this bigger. Sorry, everyone. Let's make this nice and big. And also, for the sake of argument, let's also make this rail alphabet. There we go. It would be rude not to. Right, so train operating company, LNER, fine. Who's shouting for the next one? Let's go. What's another one? Let's have a look at. I'm interested about ScotRail. Let's see what ScotRail comes out with. So, ScotRail 4 is 11.3, but 5 is 47.3. There we go. 47.3. Hopefully, people see what's going on here. Let's just drop that one down. Our average train length is 4 cars. That's interesting, isn't it? That's quite nice. Let's go with. Let's have a look at Southeastern, shall we? Southeastern is so that's 5, which is 57.6, and 4 is to do Southeastern. The trouble with hovering over this is that it gives me the tooltip which is the alt text for the image, but then I can't see what I'm actually looking at, which is say we're 7.4. 7.4, and so the average train length on Southeastern is 8 coaches long, which is very nice. People are wanting round. Yeah, I could have done round, but I thought, you're right, Gareth. I know I could have done the round function, but people want cross country. Oh, now XR. That's actually the Crossrail. We're going to XC. Sorry, is so. We're looking at 4. So there we go. Cross country 5.4. And 5 for cross country is 27.3. Let's do this. Let's see. 27.3. Drum roll, please. Oh, look. Average train length 5 coaches. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. People want to see Avanti. I think Avanti is quite obvious. It's going to be like 8 because most of their stuff is 11 and they've got a few short forms, haven't they? Or maybe it'll be like 9. You know what? Let's do. Let's do Avanti West Coast. Let's see. So we're looking at 5. We're going to put in 67.7, and then we're going to do 4, which is for Avanti 6.8. All requests welcome. Let's have a look. That's there. 10 car average train length. There you go. That's the majority of them. Transpennine. Oh, that's a good question. That's a very good question. TPE is running 3.6 million passenger train kilometres, and they're running. Oh yeah, I could have just been scrolling with my mouse without doing all this alt tab rubbish. 16.4 million vehicle kilometres. So that is 5. Their average train length is 5 coaches, which is not. That's not too. That's better than I was expecting it to come out as like 4. Yeah, interesting. Oh yeah, East Mids. That's a very good point. EMR. Yeah, so EMR is running, so that's 27.4 million vehicle kilometres, but they are running 5.9 train kilometres, which gives us an average of a 5 coach. Again, why are these long distance services? Okay, TP has its own challenges with Manchester's track layouts and stuff, but why are EMR and cross country, which do not have those pressures, why are they running train lengths potentially half as long as they need to be? Ouch. Let's do TFW. Let's get the Welsh involved. TFW 4 is 5.5 and 5 is 14. There you go. The average train length is 3 coaches. Now I'm curious as to who has on average the shortest train lengths. Ooh, who's it going to be? I'm very interested to know about that. That's gone who. Yeah. What's also funny is that you can tell the homogeneity of the fleet by how many decimal points. You know how close to a rational number all of these are. The ones that are really close to a rational number will be either it's luck or it's because they've got a pretty homogeneous train fleet. So the Elizabeth line, for example, I think the Elizabeth line do run shorter trains, don't they? Northern. This is interesting. The whole episode has now become us doing some of this number crunching, which is funny, isn't it? Northern, right. So Northern have 37.6. Oh, the people in audio-only format, this is really fun for you. 37.6 passenger vehicle kilometres and 12.4 train vehicle kilometres. And yeah, their average train length is a 3. They have a 3-car trains on average. Longest is sleeper. That would make sense. Let's have a look at the Caledonian sleeper, shall we? Which is 0.4 divided by 4.5. Yes, that is the longest. On average, 11 cars. Elizabeth Line will all 9 cars, so they'll be nice and long. West Midlands Railway is the guess at the shortest, is what, in fact, not the guess. No, it is a guess. Michael C. reckons at WMR. So let's have a look. So that's 34 divided by West Midlands. It's not WMR anymore, it's WMT, isn't it? Yeah, West Midlands Trains. Sorry, forgive me, everyone. WMT, which is running 5.6, so 5.6. 6 car. London Overground could be interesting. There we are. LO, which is running 2.9 million train kilometres and 14 vehicle kilometres. It's only 5 car, average 5 car. That would make sense. Wales and Northern seem to be competing for the shortest. Is what people reckon in the chat. So. Yes, if I do a bit of this, let's just see. It's TFW are the ones who have the shortest versus TFW and Northern, 2.5 car carriages. Yeah, there we are. There's your stats. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Anyway, that was fun. Some nice on the hoof data creation with the appropriate typeface, of course. Marvelous. And that's the numbers, folks. There's some interesting little tidbits in there that that keeps things interesting, I think. Oh, people want a GWR. It's an interesting one. Let's do GWR as the last service. Let's have a look. So GWR is 65.7, and for their passenger vehicle, and then entry 4 is 10.9. And that gives an average of 6 car vehicles, which is nice. WNT is the parent company. You're right. Yeah, that is so that. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Be curious about South Western Railways, as a lot of their trains are being withdrawn without replacement. Yeah, it's really not ideal, is it? Someone wants Chiltern. I mean, you all saw me how I did this, so you can all do it yourself. Let's I can write the whole word Chiltern out. We have the technology. So is that 2.3 and 9.3. 4 car, the average for Chiltern. There you go. Anyway, right, enough of that. The rest of the document is just definitions and stuff about methodology and quality and kind of quality. So a little bit more about the Elizabeth line and the various data sources for the information. A very useful point is how these statistics should and should not be used. These statistics should not be used to monitor the number of annual journeys within and between Scotland, Wales, and regions of England. So journeys between Scotland, Wales, and parts of England, fine. Regional rail usage has its own statistics set. Should not be used to monitor the number of entries and exits or interchanges at individual stations. That data exists as a separate data set. I use that for risk modelling, for platform interface stuff. Exploring rail journey flows between origin and destination stations. No, annoyingly, that data doesn't exist in easy access anywhere. The OD data is annoyingly inaccessible. It should be much easier to get to for all sorts of reasons. And then the last thing is comparing passenger revenue by train operator, rail industry finance. Again, it'd be nice to have that data easy to access and understand, but they count it as commercially sensitive, I believe, and I don't think it's quite as clearly laid out as the other data is here per train operator. Anyway, that ends with, that's all the different data tables. If you want to get that data, it's all within the data portal. Each table is numbered so you can grab them quite easily. You can therefore automate the thing that we just did in Excel. You can automate that very easily. And then all the other related data, some European comparisons, which is nice. Which is good. General statistical publications that the ORR do, so a little bit of chat about that, and then the back cover. So that is that really. Thanks to the ORR for pulling that together. It's always very useful. Hopefully that was insightful for yourselves as well. It's always nice to do some. Owen O'Neill, OD Matrix is now available on the new Rail Data Portal. That's exciting. So that it has been made accessible. Raphael Nicolaus, in the stats, are Southwestern Railway and LNWR subsumed under SMT, as well as the GTR companies. Oh yeah, presumably. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I presume they are. Right. Anyway, let us jump forwards from that. Get rid of my face. We'll come back for questions if you have them. As ever, this episode available in audio only format. Hello, everyone in audio only format. It's a pleasure to have you along. And do drop reviews on the various sites that you go in, and also let me know if something weird happens. As ever, I know the release schedule is not perfect on the audio, but it will always have released by the time this episode comes. I will always release the previous audio version before the next week's live one comes out. I just can't promise that it happens instantaneously because it's just me. It requires me to have a bit of evening time through the week to do that, because it requires a little bit of, not a huge amount of processing, but a little bit of tidying up sometimes. Sort the start and the end out, and check that there's no obvious, massive, horrible level spikes, and also actually upload the thing onto Podbean. The usual plugs: patreon.com/Gareth Dennis for the patron. Do support me to make this happening. What? Support me to maketh this I'm not speaking in any solid sense there. Yeah, just thanks to the Patreon people. I love you all. You allow this to keep happening. GarethDennis.co.uk/merch for the merchandise. Still in camel case, just in case you're wondering. PayPal.me/Gareth Dennis for loose change and abuse. I need to check in on that actually, because I've missed out on some nice abuse for a while. And of course, the chat. Everyone in the chat continuing now. You can all play with those. You can all download those tables and arse around with them and see what fun stuff you can create. GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord for that chat to continue ad infinitum. Next week, heavily requested episode, actually. We're finally getting around to it. Episode 195, How to Draw Transit Maps in PowerPoint. Discord server people, by the way. Discord server people. Oh gosh, yeah, a couple of very good points. So two things. First thing, Discord server people, make your suggestions for maps you'd like me to draw within an hour. We only have an hour. I propose maybe 4 maps of increasing complexity, visible diagrams of geographical diagrams. We're going to draw some maps. I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to start super simple because some people will not be very comfortable using PowerPoint at all. And then we'll elevate up to a higher level of mapping complexity, and I'll show you how I pull maps together. So that you can all create some fun maps. So there we go. Should be good fun. I do think they should have a capacity data set. Yes, the number of trains that actually ran, the number of seats on those trains, and divide by the passengers. Yes, I think that'd be very interesting, Master Trams. It's a shame they don't do that. But do keep chucking your questions over here, by the way. The next thing in the Discord server, by the way, let's go big face for this one. On the point that Rigor Mortis 69 has just made in the chat, go into the Discord server imminently. I will make some suggestion of what we're doing for episode 200 Discord server, but Patreon people particularly, hopefully will be involved again. We need to work out what we're doing to celebrate the 200th episode of Rail Natter. Work out what the hell we're going to do. In any case, draw a map of what the high-speed network should look like in the UK. Now, that's another episode, Knucker, the cheeky monkey. No, we're going to be... That's another episode. Anyway, right, let's get rid of my face. So, fine. That's next week. Oh, actually, you know what? We're going to go back to my face. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much. I enjoyed that one. That was kind of interesting. Not a huge amount of data to tap through. I'd quite like to look at some of the overcrowding and capacity stats would be very interesting. It'd be nice to compare the number of the lack of data about seats available. The trouble is that some trains seats represent capacity, some trains standing capacity is included. It'd be interesting to have seated capacity as data and be able to, but that data doesn't exist easily because trains have different numbers of seats and stuff. It'd be nice if we had data that told us how many seats a given car had, and that was automatically within the system, which in theory it is, because in theory in theory, TOTS has that information within it. Yes, capacity data would be very interesting, and it's a shame we don't have that. I suspect it comes under the category of commercially sensitive, even though actually no, it wouldn't be. It would allow us to go, well, that line's bloody full. Yeah, I think that'd be very interesting. Anyway, everyone, I think that's quite enough of that. We're 8 minutes long, which I try my best to bring these in. Failing miserably. A hoodie Easter egg, by the way, for anyone who wants it. I will wave farewell. I'm waving farewell. Miles is also waving farewell. Miles is waiting for their badge, by the way. Miles's badge saying they them. We're still waiting, EMR. We look forward to getting that badge through from you. Anyway, take good care of yourselves, you lovely people, and I'll see you next week to draw some maps. Cheerio.